Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience.
This message comes from our sponsor, Wix eCommerce, the omni-channel e-commerce platform that enables online stores all over the world to reach new shoppers and sell in integrated sales channels like marketplaces and social media from a single dashboard. Running a Facebook ads by Wix campaign can generate over 1,000% return on ad spend. Go to wix.com/ecommerce today and join hundreds of Wix sellers who already doubled their return on ad spend.
Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. I am your host, Arlen Robinson, and today we have a very special guest, Johann van Tonder, who has been running online controlled experiments like A/B tests for over 10 years. He is co-author of E-commerce Website Optimization. The second edition, a revised and completely updated version, has recently been published by Kogan Page. Welcome to the podcast, Johann.
Thank you, Arlen.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you today and have you on the podcast. Today, we're going to be diving deep into a subject matter that you're definitely, I would say, definitely an expert on as far as optimization. And today, with regards to e-commerce websites, we're specifically going to be talking about conversion optimization or conversion rate optimization and some helpful strategies that can get some e-commerce businesses thinking more in lines of what they can do to increase their conversions. But before we do get into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you got into what you're doing today?
I really stumbled into this unexpectedly and unplanned, and it happened because I was clueless. I didn't know what I was doing. And this was the mid-2000s. So to take you back to that time quickly, it was Google Analytics had just been launched. Right. Today we take it for granted, but that's what we're talking about here. The dust from the dot-com crash was settling around us. So it's that kind of environment that we're talking about. And I found myself working at a global internet investment firm. And we were doing some exciting things. Throwing spaghetti against the roof effectively and seeing what sticks. And as you can imagine, not a lot of it stuck. And we made some expensive mistakes and hopefully learned some expensive lessons. But I then ended up running a unit and a small portfolio of some of these strands of spaghetti that was sort of barely holding on to the roof. So businesses that weren't really going anywhere. And my brief was fix them, sell them, or kill them. And in trying to fix them, I tried what I thought was the obvious way first, and that was using the frameworks and models that I'd been taught in business school. Well, the punchline is that didn't work. I surrounded myself with a team of engineers, constantly hiring more engineering power, thinking that we can engineer our way out of it, right? So we just build more stuff and fix stuff that we think should be fixed. That didn't work either. I found that all the things we were building, all the things we were fixing, it just didn't land very well. And so I went to the opposite side of the spectrum and out of desperation, literally started talking to our customers of these various businesses. And as I say, Google Analytics had just launched. So we had that perspective and then we had the qualitative perspective. And suddenly things started going in the right direction. And I discovered there wasn't a name for it at the time, but the principles that I was using at the time and the principles that I found to be successful and work really well is what today you would call CRO.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I do remember those days very well. A lot of our audience knows that I've been around the block quite a bit, or in quite a long time, actually, rather, over 20 years. So I do remember those early 2000s. And I do recall when Google Analytics was first launched, they really were almost the only kids on the block, really, I think you could say, when it comes to analytics. Really, there wasn't too many other platforms around, I think, at the time.
That's right. There were a few others, and we were using one, but it wasn't up to the standard that GA set in the market, and so immediately GA was just adopted widely because it actually worked and it actually gave you the insights that you wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But things have definitely changed since then. Now there are a lot of players in the space. There's a lot of analytics tools and a lot of ways to, slice and dice your data, so to speak. Which is good for businesses and e-commerce businesses, especially. Well, of course, I
was just going to say that the trick is, and this is what we deal with every day, is knowing which rabbit holes to allow yourself to be sucked into. Because one of the problems with this big data that you're talking about is there are so many of these rabbit holes, and you've got to think about where the effort and reward equations starts not making sense anymore.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, definitely more rabbit holes because of the amount of data that is available. You do have to be very selective as far as which rabbit holes you go down and which pieces of data that you really are going to dig deep into and then make data-based decisions on it. That's going to that could actually change your business. So you do have to be careful. Definitely, it's good that the data is out there and there's these tools out there, but at the same time, if you're not strategic about it, you could definitely fall into some traps and pitfalls for sure. Of course, as I alluded at the beginning of the top of the episode, we're going to be talking about conversion rate optimization as it relates to e-commerce businesses. And I think it's a big deal these days because what I constantly see is so many businesses these days have such a focus on driving the traffic to their website and doubling down on all types of efforts via paid advertising, via organic search, just driving as much traffic as possible to their site. And then a lot of times the optimization of this traffic that they're getting and the conversions from this traffic is almost like kind of a second thought. They're always just focused on driving the traffic. So that's why I think it's definitely a big deal and it's a good time to focus on it. The question then becomes, if a business is doing this, they're driving all of this traffic, they haven't really done too much to optimize it. Where do they really begin when it comes to conversion rate optimization?
I think most people, when you ask them this question, would start talking about the operational stuff, right? So looking at the data, which we'll get to in a moment, I'm sure, and trying to discover opportunities. I think that's not the starting point. The starting point is a step before that, which is to really understand why you're doing this and what you're doing. And even a step before that is to understand the needs of your senior stakeholders, understand what problems are they trying to solve, and then helping them to solve those problems and address their needs with the tools and methodologies that CRO give you. And the reason I say that is that if you don't have that foundation in place, then it doesn't matter where you start or what you end up doing, it's still born, more likely than not, or it will fizzle out. You need that top management buy-in, you need the support, you need the mindset to be right for this to flourish. So I'd say, before we talk about the sexy stuff, that's really the place to start.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense because if you don't have the proper buy-in, like you said, from the higher levels there, then anything that you're really kind of doing, it really may not have if you don't really get the buy-in from them, you can do some small piecemeal things to try to adjust things, but if the whole vision isn't adopted or agreed upon by everybody on the whole team and on the executive side, then this kind of doesn't make sense. You have to look at it as a whole and figure out where to go.
And this is Arlen, this is lessons from the trenches. This is dear lessons straight from the trenches. I've seen this too many times. And I think it's kind of glossed over at your own peril. So I think it's an important piece.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's assume that at this point, then the business has the, kind of has the buy-in, has the go-ahead, the green light to go forward with the plan for this. Now, is there a specific methodology to follow when looking to improve the conversion rate? And if so, how they go about doing it, what tools and resources are required for it?
Yeah, right. So this is the sexy stuff. This is the real answer that people want when they ask that previous question. So yes, there are many methodologies and frameworks. And in fact, in our book, we present one such framework. But I think most of them, if you look at it, breaks down into the following. Firstly, looking at data. And you're looking at data not for the sake of it, but you're looking to find actionable insights. And what I mean by actionable insights is it's observations, which leads to something you can do. And in the context of expo, so you can do something about that in order to improve a KPI, conversion rate, or something else. In the context of CRO, what we're talking about, doing that something is usually asking a what if question. So that's step 2. We've looked at the data, and now we ask a what if question. And it's really looking at your observations, trying to uncover opportunities, maybe areas to fix, or those usually, it's a very short list. And a lot of people obsess over that, but that's not really where the money is. Then asking what if questions, and that leads to hypotheses, which really is I think it's an overused word today, but what it means is we believe something to be true based on what we've seen, and now we're going to test it. We're going to check whether that something is true, and that's where testing comes in. Mm-hmm. And that's the third and last step. Well, the last step really is repeat, so it becomes this virtual cycle. And it build, measure, learn, which is lean startup. There are many manifestations of this, but that's really what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Understand the world of the customer, understand the opportunities, ask what if, and form hypotheses, and then test them, and don't stop.
All right, continually, rinse and repeat for sure. Now, if we start to look at this from kind of a practical view of going through that particular methodology, because the average e-commerce website has, a typical structure. A lot of them have the same type of structure where, of course, they're a shop area where they'll have their shopping cart or whatever, the product categories. They'll have some other information about the business, maybe about the founder, about their mission, how they got started. And then, some other resources that really will talk about, things that supplement their customers, let's say post-purchase, maybe some informational documents, things like that. So, most of these websites have a typical structure. Now, so if we're looking at a typical structure like that, what do you really need to be mindful of as far as when a customer's eyes or potential customer's eyes first land on the website? What are some things that you need to do to really pull them in and then increase their chances of converting at some point, even if not right then and there, but at some point? What are some things that you need to look at and look to do?
I like the way you phrase this question, Arlen, because you talk about the customers and thinking at it from the customer perspective. And I need to qualify something that a few minutes ago I said before you do any of this, you need to understand the perspective of your stakeholders. But that's just to get started. That's to get the bedrock, the foundation in place. What we're really doing here is being customer centric. And we're getting into the mind of the customer, getting into the mind of the user. We're understanding their world as best we can. And in your preface there, you spoke about the structure of a website, and you're right, typical e-commerce structure is exactly as you painted it. But you can turn that on its head. So you can construct different models of looking at a website. So the one way is that, and look at it in terms of a hierarchy and UI on the page and so on. The way we look at it is through a different lens, and it's through the lens of a sales conversation. So why is that customer or that user, the prospect on your site? Presumably they're there to buy something from you. They have a need. Well, they're not there to buy something from you. They have a need, and they're there to meet that need. This is basic marketing stuff, right? Now, if they don't have that need, then they're in the wrong place anyway. That's not, we don't worry about them. They're not our target market. We're happy to lose them. They'll click the back button, go back to Google, and that's of no concern to us. So the first thing is you've got to understand your conversion potential, because I think many folks fall into this trap looking at GA and obsessing over, the low conversion numbers. And when you start digging into it and you start contextualizing that by, for example, looking at the real conversion potential, it's maybe 25% or less in some cases of that 100% pie that you're looking at. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, as you said, understanding what goes on in the mind of the customer. And if you understand that this has nothing to do with fixing stuff on a page, this has to do with fixing stuff in the mind. It has to do with fine-tuning that sales conversation. As I said, they're there because they have a need. How do we persuade them that our solution is the best for them, if indeed it is? And that's really the model, the lens through which I prefer to look at the site. And I'd say it's slightly harder work, but it's a lot more rewarding. And the reason I say it's slightly harder work is because if you look at it as a flat structure, a two-dimensional series of pages with UI stitched together, then what you're doing is you're going from a company centric perspective, and you're going, what can I change? You're asking the wrong question. How can I move stuff around this page? And the right question is, what goes wrong in the mind of the prospect, and how do I fix that?
Yeah, that is some great advice, and I've never quite heard somebody put it that way. Because I've had, of course, other people on. I've talked about conversion rate optimization. A lot of times, like you said, the first thought is the notion of moving things around. Restructuring the order of what people see when they first come to the site. Coming up with some unique landing pages. The whole nine, getting people into a funnel and all of that. But none of that really matters, like you said, unless you really can get into the mind of the customer and figure out what are they looking for, what is really going to resonate for them, and answer the questions that they've come to the site for. So I think it really, like you said, really it comes down to the messaging and that conversation that you're having with the customer, and having that right conversation and figuring out really what that conversation needs to be. Because like you said,
if I can jump quickly, and there's a quote that comes to mind here from Steve Blank, and back to my starting story in the mid 2000s, Steve Blank's book 4 Steps to Epiphany had a huge influence on me, and sort of gave me the early answers of that different process to try, as opposed to the business school models. But he talks about the answers are not in the building. The answers are not in your boardroom. And we often think, and this is the default in many organizations, we think we have the answer. We think we know our customers because we've seen emails from them, because we've spoken to them on the phone, because we're in touch with them. We think we know our customers. But the only way to get to know your customers is through a structured approach, using specific research methodologies and what Steve Blank calls customer development, and that realm of things, and stepping under the skin of the customer, getting into the mind. And so I'll give you a quick example of what that looks like. So Henry Ford, for example, everyone knows the story. He said, if I asked my users what they'd want, they'd ask for a faster horse. And we know that wasn't the proper answer. But that's the wrong question to ask of your customers. The right question to ask is about their problems, is about their needs. Consumers, customers, users are able to articulate what problems they have, how they currently solve them, and what goes wrong in trying to solve those problems, and what the upside that they're looking for. And that's what you're looking for. It's if you ask customers about that, the jewels and you start mining the gold.
Yeah, exactly. And I think once you start asking those questions based on their response, then, like you said, the jewels will be uncovered, and then you'll understand, all right, what's the conversations that I need to have, what needs to be presented, what's the proper messaging.
So this comes back to the earlier framework. So once you've spoken to the customers and you've looked at other data sources and you've mapped them onto each other, so you kind of build up a jigsaw, you've built up a picture informed by many different data sources, then you ask the what if question. So
Right.
you don't bet the farm on your idea, you test it.
Yeah.
And the reason you test it is that more often than not, you're going to be wrong. The best teams in the world are wrong 7 to 9 out of 10 times. Why would you be any different?
Right.
So you've got to test these things.
Yeah, it is all about testing, definitely. I kind of heard an acronym before when it comes to optimizing sites and actually doing the testing. It's ABT. I don't know if you heard that. Always be testing.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
because if you don't do that, then like you said, you'll never really know. I mean, you can always, like you said in your early example with the other companies you were with, you can throw some spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. You can keep doing that. But yeah, the bottom line is, you have to do that, but yeah, you have to analyze the results. All right, what is sticking, what's not, and then be able to quickly pivot after analyzing. Because otherwise, if you're just throwing stuff out there and then not really looking at the results, and then are able to effectively and quickly pivot rather than leaving, a certain strategy out there, then you're not going to win. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm always a huge advocate of kind of getting some kind of quick wins, I guess, if you will, based on your experience. What do you feel are some standard do's and don'ts when it comes to conversion rate optimization, if there's any?
Yeah, there are lots. So I'll give you the don'ts and then immediately the do's as well. Okay. So the first don't, I think, is, and I see this a lot, is working down a menu of gimmicks, a menu of tricks. Right. So we read a blog post and it worked for some other site, and let's try it. Of course, you already know what the do is. We've already spoken about the do. Your site is different. Your site is unique. Your customer base is unique, and you've got unique context. So you've got to understand your world, and don't obsess. Forget about the competitors, because that's another variation of this problem, is that people copy the competitors. And there's a great saying in the industry: don't copy the competitors. They don't know what they're doing either. You might be copying a losing test. So that's the first one. The second one, I think, is obsessing over a win rate. So the number of wins out of all the tests you run, right? So 5 out of 10 would give you a 50% win rate and so on. And that's bad because, firstly, you're going to be wrong more than you're right. So you're benchmarking yourself into a negative situation. You're going to have sleepless nights. Secondly, there is value in losses, right? So firstly, you can quantify that. If you test something that gives you a loss, that's mitigating risk. It's something you would have put live that would have hurt the sales on your site. You've managed to mitigate that risk so that you can quantify it in that way. There's another value to it, which is learning from it, as you said earlier. And some of the biggest wins I have seen have come from losing tests. And here's the thing: there is no way you would have come upon that insight that led to the win other than running a test. It is the only way that insight would have been revealed to you. So running negative tests is part of the process, important part of the process. So the do is follow the process. Don't obsess over the win rate. Obsess over the number of tests you get out the door and speeding things up. The last one, and there's a lot that I can think of here, but the last one is, if it's perfect, then you're launching too late. You validating a hypothesis. You're not engineering the final solution. That's not what this is about. What you're doing is you're validating the idea, and if you get a green tick next to it, you pass it over to your devs, and they'll develop the final solution. And sometimes, to build onto that, sometimes that minimal viable product, the test that you run, the means by which to validate that assumption or idea is far simpler than you might think. So it helps by abstracting a level or two up, when you have an idea, and thinking, what's the core idea here that we're trying to test? And is there an easier way to test that? Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to move faster and at lower effort, which means your ROI increases because you're not spending as much money uncovering losses, because that's what will end up happening.
Good stuff. Yeah, thank you for sharing those. And that last one I like, because I see a lot of businesses also fall into that trap where they try to make it perfect before, putting it out there. But, you got to just do the minimal viable product or release or whatever change you make, get it out there, get some feedback, see if it works. Are you getting it? Are your customers receptive to this change of messaging? And then go from there. Then, if there's some form of reception from that, then come back, then, like you said, bring it to your development team and figure out, all right, how do we really clean this up, make it perfect, and then
That's right.
roll this out across the site. Yeah, so I think that's a really good one there. Well, as we get ready to wrap things up, I'm always a huge advocate of finding out and learning from other companies that have been successful. So if there's any companies that you've either dealt with or we all may know that have a successful conversion rate optimization strategy, and what kind of specific things do they do?
So the first thing I'll say is emphatically, they follow the process that we've just spoken about, and they don't. What they don't do is chase the magic bullets. You'll find some misleading case studies on the web about, I don't know, changing buttons that brought in millions and that kind of thing. That doesn't exist. And this is constantly chipping away at it, and it's following the process. And so the companies that are really good at this, they don't ever chase those non-existent magic bullets. What they do specifically, and there's a lot of data to back this up, is they run more tests than the rest. And there's a lot of data. There have been many studies, among others, Harvard Business School, studies that have been done talking to companies and surveying companies who do testing, and that link is clear, is the more tests you get out the door, the more success you have. So in terms of the actual specifics, what they do, it's really impossible to give you an answer. We can maybe talk about some case studies, but the web is full of them because they're running hundreds, thousands of tests over a period. And it's all different things. And as I said, you come in this with a blank canvas. There's not a menu of tricks to work down. So it really is a range of things. It depends on where the data leads you. And often that's very unexpected places. And then maybe the last thing I'll say, and if you go onto our website, you'll find some of the logos of the companies that do this well. I don't have the permission to shout out their names here, so I won't do that. But think of the big successful e-commerce stores, and they doing CRO or a version of CRO. They might not call it CRO because it's called by many different names, and sometimes it's just experimentation. It's that mindset. CRO is just one application of the experimentation and the scientific thinking mindset. But again, there's a study from Bloomberg and one from Forrester recently showing the difference in performance between companies who do CRO or experimentation and those who don't. And it is just mind-blowing. If you've seen that stats, you will jump all over this if you haven't yet.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, it does really all come down to testing. And the more tests, the better. The more tests, the more data, the more ability for you to determine what would work versus what doesn't. Yeah, because there's really no way to know unless you do test it. You just can't keep doing the same thing, presenting your material, your messaging the same way, and expect any different results. You gotta test it because you're going to be always getting a constant flow of customers.
Arlen, just to underscore your point, an e-commerce website or e-commerce business has three options to them. The first one is doing nothing. Now, if you do nothing, well, let's not even talk about that. You won't be around this time next year. Number two is doing something, but not testing it. And what you're doing there is you are going on intuition and experience and gut feel and hunches. And I'm afraid the data is against you. The odds are stacked against you. Contact me so I can send you those reports and get you on the right track. And the third thing is what we've been talking about. That's the third option, is doing something and testing it, making sure that you're doing the right stuff. And what you're doing by that. So one concern I hear often is people say to me, well, we can't afford to be slowed down by testing. We need to move fast. Well, actually, if you do testing right, you'll work faster. You'll move faster because you're not over-engineering stuff. You're validating hypotheses. You're building MVPs, and you're meant to be getting them out at a high velocity. So you're able to get that idea off a roadmap in front of your customers far quicker than backend developers would have taken to dev the whole thing. The second thing is you make sure that your developers actually work on the right stuff. Because if you haven't validated your ideas, your developers are always stretched. How do you know whether the things on their backlog, on their dev roadmap, actually will move the needle? So if you validated that, you increase that ROI. The third thing is you keep only the winners, and you know which ones would have caused you a loss, and you've managed to avoid them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, those are some great closing pieces of advice there. Because, yeah, I think the mindset companies have, like you mentioned, is that doing this stuff, doing this testing is, we don't have time for this. We got to get stuff out there. We got to drive customers, we got to drive sales. And they think a testing process is, going to slow things down. But you're totally correct. It's the opposite. You're going to expedite the process by getting more data more quickly, seeing what's working, and then be able to, make those changes. So it makes a lot of sense. Well, I definitely appreciate everything that you've imparted on us, Johann. I've learned a lot for sure, and the listeners have as well. And these are some awesome tactics that I know, can get businesses to get more in that mindset of what they need to do to improve their conversion rates, because it definitely is a big deal as our e-commerce space becomes more crowded and more crowded than ever. You got to do things to keep those customers on the site, and then have that right conversation with the customers. I think that's the bottom line. Well, I always like to kind of shift gears here with my closing question, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think our audience would be interested to know about you.
Okay, so this one always gets a response. I'm a trained venomous snake handler. So the area that I grew up in is home to some of the most dangerous snakes anywhere on the planet. And I've been trained and certified to handle them. And so what I do still now, when I'm in the area and when I have time, and when people have snakes in their homes, they'll call me and I'll go out and I'll capture the snake and release it safely where it belongs.
Wow, that's definitely an interesting fun fact. I think that kind of ranks, if I'm thinking about my past fun facts, that ranks, I think, in the top 5 of fun facts that I've had on the show. So good stuff. Yeah, you would be right at home here in Florida, because we have some venomous snakes, and I've seen some around my house. Too bad you aren't in my area, because I would have called you had you handle them. Yeah, I've seen a few rattlesnakes, actually, believe it or not, here in the Orlando area, right around my house, and some really big ones. I've stayed away. I'm not going near those guys.
You're very fortunate to have them around you.
Yeah, fortunate. Okay. I don't know. Well, I guess the one thing to note about the snakes that a lot of people don't realize is they're definitely awesome at taking care of some of those critters. The rats, other types of nuisance types of animals. So yeah, they can
that's right.
Definitely keep that down.
If you tell me you dislike snakes, then my question to you is, do you like rats and all these things you're talking about? And I always say to people, just one last comment, if you'll allow me, Arlen, people who stay in areas where there are a lot of snakes, I say to them that if you saw all the snakes that saw you, you wouldn't sleep at night. They were around you. You just didn't know about them. That is
true. Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, because when I'm walking out and about, I rarely see them every now and then, like I said, but there's a lot more that are, in the weeds.
They're watching you.
They definitely are. That is very, very true. Well, thank you for sharing that, Johann. I really appreciate that. That's definitely a pretty cool, fun fact. And lastly, of course, before we let you go, if you don't mind letting our audience know what's the best way to reach you if somebody wants to get in contact with you directly.
I think 2 ways. One is hit me up on LinkedIn, or contact me via the website, which is awa-digital.com.
Okay, great. awa-digital.com. We will definitely have that in the show notes and on our transcript on our website. Well, thank you for sharing that, Johann. I appreciate you coming on today. You've been an awesome guest today on the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast.
It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of wading through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.